You are tuned in to another edition of Americana Music Profiles, brought to you by Americana Rhythm Music Magazine and AmericanaMusicMagazine.com. I'm your host, Greg Tutwiler. Let's jump right in to the next exciting interview. Not all bands start out the traditional way. For Don Harrison, it was his experience making documentaries for his daughter's travel lacrosse team that unearthed a latent interest in songwriting, which led to a full-blown CD recording project several years later. Don Harrison is my guest on this edition of Americana Music Profiles as we talk about his songwriting and his family's experience in recording this new CD, Climate Change. Hi, Don. Welcome to the podcast today.
Good. Hi, Greg. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am talking to you where? You're in Maryland? Is that right?
I'm in Maryland, technically Severna Park, Maryland, but that's just a little bit north of Annapolis, and I'm actually from Annapolis.
All right. Awesome. So you've had a kind of an interesting induction into the music world. You're a professional financial advisor by trade, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And not a lifetime musician, do I understand that right?
Not a lifetime musician, though I did sort of get started in this relatively early as a teenager, and then kind of left it. I played sang in a band when I was your typical kind of garage band kid thing, and then I don't know, for some reason I think sports and girls I kind of lost interest in it. It never occurred to me that girls might be just as interested in a lead singer in a band, or maybe even more interested than they would be in some guy who's one among 30 with a football helmet.
Right, yeah.
So, but the folly of youth.
Right. Well, at least they can identify you without the helmet on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as an adult musician, you had a kind of a interesting, colorful reintroduction to the music world, then, right?
Well, yeah. My two daughters, who are also sing on the album, they were both involved in musical theater in high school, and also in local stage productions for local theater productions. And we've got a little bit. There's a little bit of music genes in the family. Both my maternal grandfather sang and danced in minstrel shows. They always had an old mandolin and a guitar in the house, and I used to kind of pick notes on that, but I never really learned how to play. My two daughters sang, and I hadn't sung really since I was a teenager. But a good friend of mine, Steve Willett, has run since 1996 a program called Crossover Lacrosse, and it's for girls lacrosse, and basically it's an exchange program with a community near Manchester, England, where one year we send a team over there to play. These are 14, 15-year-old girls typically, and the next year they send a team over here, and the girls stay and with the girls they're going to be playing against, and they're here for about 2 weeks. Well, I've been a lacrosse coach for years, been very involved. My younger daughter, Amy, who sings on the album, she played lacrosse. So I started making videos after the kids would get home of their adventures in England, and one thing kind of led to another, and I'm putting music to the different sequences in the videos, and I thought one year, I've got all these pictures of the girls in goofy crowns at a Castle gift shop and trying on clothes and boutique. Why don't I take that ZZ Top song and carry a song, Sharp Dressed Man, rewrite the lyrics, make it Sharp Dressed Girls, get a karaoke version, and have Amy and Jenny sing it and record it and use that for one of the sequences, which we did. And I have a friend who had, at the time, a recording studio in his basement. Something led to another, and after a couple of years of this, I'd written, 8 or 9 different songs, everything from, Hillbilly Bone to W.S. Walcott Medicine Show to Ballad of John and Yoko, and I thought, everybody seems the lyrics I write, they obviously only have appeal to the kids and their parents in the program.
Right.
Why don't I start writing music that would have more general appeal? And at the time, like I said, I played bass a little bit when I was a teenager. I had sung in a band, but I had very little knowledge. So I gave myself a crash course in music theory, and I was actually amazed at how much untapped knowledge there was. I mean, I've been listening to all kinds of music and absorbing it for my whole life, so it wasn't as difficult as you thought it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I got a keyboard so that I could sort of left hand my way around, the different chords to write the songs. And that's a little different background than I think most of your interviews would have.
Well, I don't think many roots-themed bands would say they got their start as a karaoke version of a ZZ Top song.
Yeah, well, that's that was kind of one of the points of the whole album. Is there are a number of different musical styles in there. There's no ZZ Top, but there's a lot of variety. I've described it a number of times. It's kind of like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get from one to the next.
Well, I saw where you kind of coined the phrase 21st century American folk music. How did you settle on that style as the type of music that you guys wanted to create?
Yeah, people, as friends would learn what we were doing and would ask me, well, Don, what kind of music is this? And, the name of the group is Harrison Country,
mm-hmm.
but it's country in the sense that it's a big country with a lot of different music traditions. Why not use them all? And we've certainly got some songs that would fit right in Nashville, but that's not the whole of the album. But when they would ask me this question, I didn't have a real good answer. I'd sort of stumble and bumble and
mm-hmm.
give these sort of lanes. Well, there's a couple songs that are kind of country, and there's a couple blues, and there's one that's sort of pop, and one that sounds like Carole King, and so forth and so on. And then eventually, what I realized about halfway through is that all 12 of the songs are story songs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of songs that I always liked. Songs that have characters and dialogue
mm-hmm.
and places and things in them, where you really have a sense of entering a different world. And I realized that for the most part, I was just writing songs about life around me, a blind date,
mm-hmm.
a boyfriend's obsession with fantasy football, a husband and wife who have very different taste, girls out on the town looking for Mr. Right and they can't find him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's folk music, not in the sense of the folk revival music of the 60s and Baez or Bob Dylan or whatever. It doesn't sound, for the most part, at all like that. But it's folk music in a very fundamental sense in that, the sources that those musicians in the 60s drew on were songs like Froggy Went A-Courtin' and John Henry and Scarborough Fair. And the people who had written those songs hundreds of years before, they weren't sitting down and saying, oh, I'm going to create folk music.
Mm-hmm.
They were just telling stories about their world and their lives using the instruments and the music traditions that were available to them at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So those kinds. I like story songs. I like songs with characters.
What were the influences for you for the flavor of the music that you guys create?
Well, for the flavor, I mean, I was very fortunate in that and this is really a big part of the album. When I started doing this, I have a client who plays bass in a number of local bands, and Josh Chapman, and I sat down with him. I said, listen, here's this song I have. Actually, the first song I wrote was the first song on the album Men in the House. What do you think? And he said, I kind of like this. It sounds good, but Don, he's a very good musician. I've never actually written a song. I have this other fella who he played in a band with, Brian Ewald, and let me introduce you to him because
mm-hmm.
I think it would be more up his alley. And it just so happened Brian lives about 2 miles away from me, he is one of the most revered and respected musicians in Maryland. He's not only a fabulous guitar player, but he has a great ear, and he's an excellent producer. So, that was really a great deal of luck that I kind of stumbled into him. And as we started working on these songs and recording, we basically fell into this kind of groove where I'd write the lyrics, melody that goes with the lyrics, most of the chords, have an idea of the tempo, maybe what kind of feel I wanted. I'd sit down with him and we'd go, this story kind of sounds like it, maybe we should have a Motown bass line with this. Or this is a little more traditional country, so let's do it acoustic with a mandolin. So every song, depending on what the story was, we kind of chose a different feel for it. So that's kind of how we ended up with the sound.
When did it become a mission to create a record? Was that the intent from the beginning, or did it just
no? Initially, and I think probably if you've got a lot of other performers and musicians out there listening to this, they can sympathize with this. My initial thought when I wrote Men in the House was simply to sell it to someone else to sing, and I have some second-degree contacts in Nashville, and I thought I would use those. So we got the song done, and I started working on this. And what I found was some of those secondary contacts talked a really good game, and nothing materialized. And I also realized that some of the music I was writing, it's not really country top 40 at all. So I just thought, what the heck? We're doing this. I've got a whole family here. We can all sing. Let's just record the darn thing ourselves.
Okay. And you did end up actually bringing in a professional vocalist to participate.
Well, yeah. That's also that was a bit of serendipity that worked out really well. Early on in the process, I mean, I'm sitting down in the evenings, and of course, this is after doing a whole lot of talking all day, and working on the songs, and I'm singing a lot. And my voice was really getting hoarse, and I thought, I could use some professional vocal lessons, just breathing and maybe how to get around this and so forth. So I asked Brian, who locally gives vocal lessons, and he said, well, this fellow Jeremy Ragsdale, who incidentally has recently won the X Factor in Romania, believe it or not. And Jeremy's got a great voice. He went to Berklee School of Music, but he was $200 an hour, and I really didn't need $200 an hour coaching. So he had some other folks in his studio, and one of them was his niece, Lexi. And so I started with her, and sort of one thing led to another, and as she started working on the harmonies, I mean, we've got 5 voices, so we do a lot of harmony on the songs. And eventually she actually sings the lead on the title song to the album Climate Change.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just, one thing led to another, and I don't think she was actually involved in the first song, Men in the House, but, she sings harmony on the other 11.
How did you come about the name for the record, Climate Change?
Well, it's just the name from one of the songs, and it has nothing to do with global warming. It's really a play on climate change, and it's a fishing, hunting, and cheating song.
Okay.
So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. How long did the process take for you from realizing, hey, we've got more than 3 songs here, let's start working on a record, to having the finished product?
It took a couple of years.
Okay.
And we're working on another one now, so hopefully that'll be a little quicker. All the songs are written, but we all have full-time jobs. Brian is a full-time musician. He does a lot of session work. He plays in 3 or 4 different bands. So this was a side light for all of us.
Are you guys going out as Harrison Country and playing places?
We have done one small performance for a local for the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition back in October at their local fundraiser run walk. Kind of the issue at the moment for performing